David, hi. Good to see you this afternoon.
Grace, how are you?
I'm very good.
Good.
You're up in Manchester, yeah?
I am, yes. Yeah, lockdown in, sunny Manchester. It's quite nice today.
Look, your career is actually absolutely fascinating one. I was thinking about it earlier, because you've kind of gone from your days at M&B when we first met, and obviously mentored by the great Tony Hughes.
Cooking together.
Yeah, to you saving my bacon cooking at Walt Disney. Yes, absolutely.
Good times.
That was a good trip, though. You'd be fair, that was a good. To Chief Operating Officer of People First, to running the National Skills Academy, to running the ALMR, to obviously running your own business. And there's very few people who can actually have the broad perspective that you possess yourself.
You're too kind.
So let's go back.
Okay.
look at that face that you can see really looking for the angle. Let's go back to your days at M&B. I mean, they were great days, weren't they? It was a great time.
Yeah, they were fabulous. I mean, I left a very short period in the city doing accountancy, which wonderful career, but not for me, to be a trainee manager. Didn't use my degree, just applied to be a trainee manager, and ended up running the first fork and pitcher, which became Vintage Inns. And had we all need luck, and had the good fortune that a certain gentleman's first day in his new role was to visit the first of the fork and pitchers, of which there were not many, and the food offering in M&B was very limited. And that man was Tony Hughes, who has been, a mentor, and he's just an outstanding bloke, really, as well. So, and got the opportunity to do lots of different things, from delivering at the White Hart at Poole in Wharfdale to Deterministics, which was a wonderful eye-opening experience, working across brands and unpicking it, taking it to pieces, measuring everything to understand what's the ultimate vision for the guest experience, and how do we build it all back together so it's actually deliverable. Across area manager, ops director, creating new concepts, acquisitions, portfolio, all the stuff that big companies can offer, with the right people, spotting people that may have something to offer beyond the job they're currently doing. That's
always been at your heart. You've always been a great idealist about supporting young talent, haven't you?
Yeah, old Chinese proverb, even a clock is right twice a day, and often we can be accused of putting people in the wrong slots that don't necessarily recognise their greatest abilities, or do something that suits a boss rather than what suits that person and their family, which ultimately ends up in a vicious circle that doesn't end well for everybody. So, understanding the people, their goals, their capacity, their capability. I think one of the first things that Tony introduced in M&B in the restaurant part was have an expanding view of our people's current ability and future potential. And I couldn't put it better myself.
I mean, there was a great culture in those days, wasn't it, which he set and developed?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. We were doing lots of things that were very different to many other areas of other businesses. But leadership, and Tony being Tony.
So what made him, for those who don't know him, what made him stand apart?
Number one, he's done it. He knows it. He comes with, anybody that knows him, he's not only, he would describe himself as the young waiter from Wigan or Widnes. His learning and his experience and his knowledge is phenomenal, but he gets people, he spots things, and he gives you the opportunity, and he will back his judgments. And it's not always easy, in certain times things are very tough, but you may be having the toughest time where you're not allowed to order anything in a cold January or February, and the numbers are looking tough, but through the post arrives a book that still anchors you back to, thank God I'm not the only one that believes in this stuff, even though around me at the moment it doesn't appear that way. There's just so many facets to really.
You then moved on to Fuller's for a short time, and then on to People First. What took you to People First?
Restaurant group in between the two as well, actually, running the airport.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, with Andrew Page and Trish. I think People First, a restaurant group, I enjoyed restaurant group. And it was, again, an interesting, I think that's probably the theme is, I don't want to achieve what some may call success and then sit back with your feet on the desk. I think there's always things to learn, always things to stretch yourself doing. Restaurant group was a completely different environment. And I got a call from a guy I used to work with and said, will you come and help me? And there's, in my eyes, there's, the route, board directors or senior positions in PLCs was not something that excited me. You're in some ways too disparate and distance from the day-to-day and the people that make the difference to the guest and all the rest of it. And there's a lot more politics, but politics is also quite interesting, as came to bear later, at various points. But People First was for the good of an industry I love, and I've had a lot of wonderful memories and opportunities, and lots of people will lambast hospitality, but there's no industry that you can fly as rapidly and get the opportunities and the variety of opportunities as hospitality, in my opinion. And the fact that a lot of the educational backup was not necessarily fit for purpose or focused on the right thing, but ticked boxes to meet criteria for, at the time, the LSE, was something that needed remedying. If you take the classic old, as a chef, chefs were still 10 years after 706 series ended, we're still going, oh my God, I wish we still had 706. So, MVQs were designed for workplace, but the ease and comfort of putting those into becoming the college-based education is just flawed in so many ways. And it became a lowest common denominator and making it simple. So we, being able to put a new qualification in that revisited the rigor and standards and experiences required of 706 was very satisfying. And dealing with government.
You had a very good relationship with government, didn't you?
Yeah, we did really well. It's listen first and understand their issues and what they're trying to achieve, and then how do you match it and how do you help them to understand then that actually what you're trying to do is the same thing. We got some very good deals with government, which they understood the value that hospitality brought, but saw it at that time as a very disparate collection of people. That one party would shout for one thing and another party would shout for another, and then there'd still be about 3 or 4 other factions all calling for different things.
I was going to say, because the thing, you've always been we've known each other, 25 years, do I say that?
Yeah.
You've always been a straight talker. Surely the politics piece must have been difficult to learn or navigate through.
Yeah, well,
or not.
At the same time, it's a challenge and it's interesting, and nobody should be fooled that most of those people really want to do the right thing too. I could wax lyrical about the failings of various governments with the best of them, and there are flaws in what is a huge machine, but they typically want to do the best. But getting through the door, I remember vividly my first meeting with Sean Woodward, who was the Tory MP that crossed the floor, was Northern Ireland Secretary for the Tories and became Department of Culture, Media and Sport for the Labour Party. And my first meeting with Sean Woodward, and he said, oh, David, my first job was in a pub and it was bloody awful. Why on earth should I help you? And we spent a while talking about why. And not long later, he ended up on Question Time and was just reeling out the stats and the positives that existed within our sector. It's no different from anything. You have to give people the there and here as to why something makes sense and also why it works for them. And so intellectually, it was a challenge, and it was frustrating in ways, but it was also fun in ways as well. And I don't mean that in a frivolous sense. It was really interesting and a challenge.
I mean, it's a great industry, isn't it? But we don't always represent ourselves the best way, do we?
No, things have improved an awful lot. I mean, and yeah, there aren't many good things to come out of COVID, and there are many terrible circumstances and situations. But the performance of UK hospitality and Kate, and everybody, by and large, everybody's sticking to helping government and other bodies understand the importance of this industry, upstream and downstream, I don't think that's an easy one for anybody to walk back from going forward. Whether and there are calls for we should have a minister for hospitality. Whether or not we get that, to some extent, is very good, but that depends who that minister is. That depends whether that minister is going to be committed and gets it, because actually the ones that matter are the ones that you talk to in the business department, in the Home Office, in the Chancellor's office, etc., because ultimately there is this situation in politics where there are, and I'm not going to name names, but there are ministers who fly through these departments, merely not saying anything that's going to antagonize their superiors because they have higher officers in mind. And so it's very difficult once they get a ministerial job to really get them, unless Sean Woodward was wonderful in a way, because he didn't have any axe to grind. He didn't want to be Prime Minister. He didn't take a salary. He did it because he wanted to do it. So he would say what he believed was right. And, that's conviction politics is a good thing. Whether you disagree with them or not, it's a good thing if you can get into their convictions and understand their convictions. I enjoyed working with Andy Burnham, and obviously he's been in the news and such forth. Andy was fabulous, setting up the first level 4 apprenticeship in a company, Living Ventures, and he was on board hook, line and sinker and just supported it all the way through because he saw the value. And you see this disconnect between, you can get funding to be educated in a university, but actually vocational qualifications, well, you've got to do it yourself, and you've got to have a job, or you've got to have your parents, and you go to a local college, and some people get this stuff and others just are passing through. But an interesting time, very interesting time.
And then you became chief exec of the National Skills Academy, which that was a political hotcake, wasn't it?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, in so many ways. I mean, and we had to fight long and hard to get, there were only a few industries that got that. And it was, as much as anything, the first tick in the box was, will we be, as hospitality, be valued sufficiently to get this status and the opportunity to create this? And, an amazing board. And and we did some excellent stuff, but there also, I've always believed that there were too many bodies, and there's too many bodies that are disjointed, and they're worried about stepping on each other's toes, or they're worried about, they've got a great opportunity over there. Maybe we should play in that space as well. And it's so, People First and the National, you couldn't put the National Skills Academy in with People First to start with, but actually they should have been one and the same thing, and government should have stuck with, but then a party changes and things change and it evolves. And but again, great learning. You can't look back on anything and say, and I had a brilliant team, it was, again, really interesting to bringing Disney over to the UK for the first time and training 1,200 people on Park Lane, which they would never have the opportunity to do. And all the big companies paid for half of the audience from small companies to be able to attend was wonderful. It's kind of democratizing the very best education that is humanly available in the world, frankly. So yeah, it was, but politics in any company is not easy.
Huh? I mean, the interesting thing for you is now, because you're now running your own businesses.
Yeah.
Do you miss those days? Or when you look back, which bits have been, because you have gone for a whole curve from the corporate to what I call the body piece.
Yeah, well, yeah. When I set out, I'd never intended to stay within a PLC. I stayed at M&B much longer than I ever intended because of one man, Tony Hughes, and the learning that I was getting. But it was always an ambition to run my own business with people that I wanted to work with, doing the things I believed in. And so, yeah, did that 2012 took the Devonshire Arms, and you know it's bloody hard running your own business. You know, and this industry is tougher, and I think the perception of the public that you make amazing margins and you know we're all wealthy is so far from the truth. Meanwhile, every line apart from your sales line is growing. There's not one cost line that's got less. So they needed a reset as well. And you know, whether it's the rents that people pay, the charges and the taxes and you know utilities, everything, and the business model of old, there's just become more and more challenging as time.
And that's the really interesting bit about now, isn't it? Because there is a reset in models.
Yeah, and we had, you know, I remember, God, it is a long time ago now, back doing acquisitions and portfolio for All Bar One, looking at sites for All Bar One in the centre of London, just by Victoria, on Victoria Street, and there was a 3,000 square foot site. Great location, very happy with it. They wanted a rent that we got kind of board approval for. Went back to the agent went back to that we're working with, went back to the landlord, who said, sorry, we don't have 3,000 available anymore. We only have 1,000, 1,500, because Starbucks had just paid effectively the same rent we were going to pay for 3,000 for half of it. And that happens. You know, there's been an influx of funds from one place or another around the world and from VCs, and that has driven up the cost and the competitiveness of the industry. And meanwhile, we've had an oversupply. The public still don't value the way the Mediterraneans do, going out to escape the madness. But they, you know, meanwhile, they've just more and more people fishing in the same size pond, struggling to make ends meet, and then COVID hits. And as I say, another, you know, it may be that how our industry is perceived is one of the positives, but terribly for all those that don't survive, which, you know, I have two pubs, one of which may not, you know, survive, but you pays your money, you takes your chance. There's no other way to look at it. And it's terrible as people put their lives into a business, and for no fault of their own, they could lose it. But there is a rebasing that's going to take place as a result of this, which...
So you've been reinventing yourself as well, haven't you? Because actually that, I know you're avoiding the bit about talking about you, but it is interesting how you've kind of reinvented yourself 3 or 4 times going through your career, which actually for a lot of people is actually what they need to hear about now yourself. Because even now you're reinventing yourself again, aren't you?
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that, to be honest. I've never had a plan. I like learning. I like challenges. And you know what each phase of your life brings, you make the best calls you can at the time based on the knowledge you have and the views that you have. So I don't know. I genuinely haven't thought about it like that.
It's not quite so laissez-faire, is it? I mean, I'm lucky enough to know your daughters, who are both exceptionally starting off their careers, and they talk about how disciplined and tough you are at times.
Yeah,
in a positive way, that actually has helped them develop their own disciplines as well.
Well, I think whether you're dealing with people in any shape, any walk of life, trying to be honest with people, whether it's an assistant manager that's just not showing up to work every day, and he is there, but he's not really there, he's not present, and sitting down and talking to them and unpicking why. There's always a reason why somebody isn't motivated, and in one guy's case, it was just thanks for the chat and the kick up the backside, and he handed in his notice and went to work in a completely different industry that was better suited to what he wanted for his life at that moment in time. It's not, you know, the fact that he left, all right, it left a hole, but that's our job to success plan but actually you're better off to have somebody that's committed and wants to do it. And I don't know, no, it's not being planned. It's just opportunities arise. There's opportunities you turn down, that I have turned down, but I don't regret. I think some of my mates in the industry have always found that, you know, you've gone to people first. Are you off your rocker? You should be going to brands or with venture capitalists. It's not necessarily what floats my boat. I'm not driven by material things.
No, I mean, that's where we've always kind of got on, isn't it? Because we're both quite idealistic at heart.
Yeah, so you've always told me, Chris, I'm an idealist. Yes,
you are. But it always makes a harder journey if you are. That's the point.
Well, yeah, I think there's things you think about things probably more than some other people do. Whether it's I spent about 4 days with 2 or 3 hours sleep watching the American election recently, and
I know, wasn't it fun?
and really genuinely caring. It matters. It genuinely matters, and you can't put it to one side and go, well, that's over the other side of the pond, and that somebody like Donald Trump and some people if anybody ever interested in watching this and thinks my views are bizarre, well, that's fine. You're welcome to your opinion. He is terrible for the world and society and for humanity.
And yet he got the second biggest vote of all time.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Which which also causes pause for thought, because you have to go back to any situation in any business, any work environment, understand why, and then how can you address that?
Yeah, I'll tell you what really fascinated me on that day, because I drove up to Scotland overnight.
Yeah.
And listening on the radio, you would believe it was all pro-Trump. You would believe Trump was winning. And then you get to your destination, you come and watch BBC television, and it's completely opposite.
Yeah.
It's completely anti, and actually the difference nowadays in reporting is getting harder and harder.
Well, I found myself flicking between, because a little bit, and I'm not geeky about many things, but I became to know the different districts within key states, because I found the BBC, as wonderful it is, there wasn't enough granularity, enough detail, and I found myself watching CNN and every so often flicking over to Fox News to see the different, which is important, and something from my wife, doesn't read one newspaper, she reads 4. And the truth, probably, she always says, the truth lies somewhere in the middle between a Daily Mail and a Guardian or whatever. And everybody has their natural biases or their favourites or their perspective, but it's only founded by knowledge and expertise and experience and people talking to each other. And what we find at the moment is you've just got two ends of everybody's just jumping to the other end of the seesaw, and it just now it's just how do you get them to? And Biden's got if you want an interesting job and a challenge.
Oh, absolutely.
Mr. Biden, I applaud you. Good luck with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's 2 things close to our heart. One is leadership and developing the young.
Yes.
We've always believed it, and I think that obviously ties in with what you did at People First. And actually, we've got a big job on that now, don't we? Because the last 10 years, we haven't seen young talent come through. That's probably what hoped.
No, I think, again, it may not be a popular stance, but if you go through that dramatic increase in volume of outlets in our sector, what you saw was, and I'll go back to that, Starbucks come over here, but there's been a Pret. Pret's very successful, is admired. Starbucks, who do they hire? They hire the assistant manager from a Pret to be the general manager in a Starbucks. Starbucks open 50 more sites, and the progression and the speed of appointment of people to levels that they actually have not had the training, the development, the nurturing and the mentoring to be able to do well. So when you've got a more static labour market, actually people are caused to spend longer and learn more. And I think that not only have we got people, some young people that have got talent not having the opportunity and not having the profile, but you've also got this situation where you've got younger people, and most of them are younger than me now, but they haven't had all those formative years of slogging it out in the trenches. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I don't want everybody else to have to endure some of the tough things that happened in days of old. But when you appoint somebody, you've got a responsibility to nurture them, and you appointed them to the job. If they fail, that's on you. It's not just on them. They didn't fail because they didn't want to by 90% of the time. So it's the lack of time, and with the always on technology and communication. I used to be able to go out as an area manager and nobody bothered me all day. I could just go and do what I wanted to do. And all right, so when I got home late at night, I'd catch up on all the emails that had piled in from all the people sitting at desks. all day.
Did we have emails in those days?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
You've been talking to my daughters too much. To do that when you're out on the road caused all sorts of challenges. You know, I had a scion that I actually broke the rules internally of auto forwarding my M&B emails to my own personal email, so that when I was out and about, I could pick them up, so that I could deal with them before having to deal with them at 11 o'clock at night. But that wasn't strictly allowed. It wasn't allowed. But you could go and get on with your agenda, whereas you can sit in meetings today and people constantly being distracted by their telephone. And it's do the job, concentrate on the job, invest your time in where you are here and now, and fight the battles to say, I need a bit more space. But there's so much more reporting, there's so much more media, there's so much more marketing. It's a huge burden on people to be able to manage all of that while doing the job.
Yep. But we need to somehow find the answers, don't we?
Yeah.
We need to inspire and make sure people have upward mobility, because the problem we've got at the moment is increasing the debt on young people.
Yeah.
And yet we need to make sure that actually they can see how they can build wealth and careers.
Yeah, and I think other thing I would say about the hospitality industry, which I think has shone throughout COVID, is they are by nature people who work in hospitality. They don't just do it because it was the only job, or as some parents may wrongly think. They do it because they are hospitable by nature, which means there are lots of people that are willing to give of their time and give of their experience to help other people. It's not a secretive industry where people try and keep any knowledge from each other. People share, people are willing to help each other. And I think, you know, leveraging that and getting the people that do have expertise and experience and opening up those communication channels is a huge opportunity, because I guess, you know, we've touched on this before, it's the middle managers that will suffer most in this period, and the industry and industries change and move on. But I think the one thing I've come more and more to believe is that hospitality is, and I sound like a stuck record, it is a wonderful industry, because there are very, very few industries where you effectively manufacture retail and do every other component of running a business and have to do all of it while facing the guest and the consumer, which gives you an ability to juggle many things, balance various components and understand the pipeline, while doing it very visibly under time pressures. And that allows you to be fleet of foot. And actually, most people in hospitality know far more than they'll probably ever believe they know if they move to other sectors. And I'm not saying they should move to other sectors, but we don't find it easy to recognize the skill sets and the skills and the softer skills that people really have acquired in hospitality.
Which leads me on very nicely to the other thing we're both involved in, which is fair tip share.
Yeah.
So obviously the service charge piece.
Yes.
Obviously we're both involved. Your thoughts on this? Why are you involved in this? Why do you?
Maybe some of it's the idealist in me, Chris, to use your
really shocked me.
I think, again, you know, for the consumer to better understand our industry, and especially and also National Skills Academy, you know, signposting the things that are right and the things that are good. We do have an employer brand of hospitality, but individual companies have employee brands as well. And that gets tarnished in so many ways. Being able to signify clearly and signpost that these people do it right and share their tips, which is what the consumer intended. They didn't intend it to pay for a shortfall in the profitability of a company. And that will help us with transparency. It'll help us with the guest confidence, and it helps us reputationally. And yes, while signposting the good, it also obviously signposts those that aren't. And that's, to me, that's a good thing.
But it's also about the industry standing up, isn't it?
Oh, undoubtedly.
Saying, you know, these people are important.
That's huge. A waitress or a waiter. No, they're account managers worth millions in reality. Then, you know, yes, they may be paid too little. And if the broken model could be fixed, then I would pay all of my team vastly more every hour if you could afford it. We have to jiggle some things, but certainly the tips belong to the people that are doing the face-to-face and growing guests who want to return with their friends. And they're not only sustaining today, but they're developing for 5, 10, 15 years. And they are the most important people, not the person that sits at the top.
So the story, your story in simple words, is always have belief and listen to and be open to opportunity.
Yeah, and learn.
And learn.
Yeah,
and actually, that's one of the big lessons now, isn't it?
Yeah,
life is about continuous learning.
Yeah, look, the world has moved on, but you joked about my daughters and the fact that, you know, I can mention something like you did. Did you have a mobile phone when you were? The pace of change is phenomenal, and it's an old cliche: if you stand still, you're going backwards. But in reality, it's never been truer, because all around you, it's just moving at pace, and not just in your own backyard, but it's global, and it's tumultuous. So yeah, don't stand still, keep learning, keep moving.
I think that's one of the exciting parts, though, isn't it? Now, isn't it?
Oh God, yeah, and this industry allows that, because there's so many facets to it, so many areas. I mean, God, if anybody had said to me that you leave the City of London doing accountancy and you plot out those things, they wouldn't fit on any. You know, People First, we did that career tree, spider's web. It wouldn't fit anywhere on there. So what? I'm content and happy, and there's still more challenges ahead. So we'll keep plugging away, and hopefully, you know, industry will embrace and keep supporting the UK hospitalities of this world, and they'll support fair tip, you know, and stand up and say, you know, we do it right, and this is how we should all do it.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Dave. That's been great talking to you.
Pleasure. Thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you for your time. I do love that picture behind you.
Thanks. Yeah.
They're quite special.
Yeah, it's an American artist, Tim Yang.